Hey, I'm Frank from the Geek Room, and you are watching The Atheist Edge.
The Bible doesn't express wisdom. It does everything the Bible says about the earth in relation to the rest of the cosmos is absolutely wrong. The Bible doesn't describe science, nor does it praise science, nor does it praise wisdom. The Bible thinks wisdom is believing the idiocy that you're told without question. No, that is not wisdom. That's why the Bible and the Quran both give the opposite definition of a fool than what a fool would be like in common parlance. A fool is one who too readily accepts improbable claims from questionable sources on insufficient evidence. The Bible says that a fool is anybody who doesn't accept improbable claims from it's exactly that. You're supposed to believe whatever stupid thing you're told
and
by
blind faith is a virtue.
Exactly. Exactly. You're just supposed to believe what you're told because I said so and for no other reason, no matter how ridiculous it is. Otherwise, you're a fool. That's what it is. The Bible gets it completely backward, and the Quran does as well. So the Christians will all tell me that I'm using the wrong definition of faith, but I'm using the same definition of faith that is throughout the Bible, in every reference the Bible makes to faith, as well as the sermons of theologians past and present, and all, of course, dictionaries as well, and also extra biblical scriptures like the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita, for example.
So example number 2. Yeah, you're gonna get like 9 videos out of this.
Fuck yes.
So in the wedding at Cana, which was supposed to be Jesus' first miracle, it turns water into wine, and it notes this specifically about it. John 2 says, "Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, 'Fill the jars with water,' and they filled them up to the brim. But why were the jars empty to begin with, if they were being used for the purification ritual?"
Because they have to start out empty at some point, right?
Theoretically.
Okay, so that's why.
Or they had already done the ritual, and the jars were empty as a result.
Okay.
But no, it's more complicated than that. So we were talking about germ theory, and we're talking about how Jesus doesn't actually wash his hands. Mark notes that for the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands properly, holding the tradition of the elders. So that explains why the jars were empty, because according to Mark, they washed their hands.
Jesus is only interested in washing his feet and using somebody else's hair to do it. As if that makes any fucking sense. Okay, so Jesus turns water into wine, and he does it in the Penn and Teller way of, you pour water into the jug, and then you turn the jug upside down, and it pours wine out. We saw Penn and Teller do this. But this is based on Dionysus' miracle, where he had the springs of the earth bring forth wine. That's a much better trick, and Penn and Teller couldn't do that one. So every miracle that is attributed to Jesus is actually attributed to somebody else prior, centuries prior, and this is one of the great examples of that. So I don't understand why this is even cited. I mean, even the bit about Jesus walking on water, did you know that Indra had already done that in Indian theology centuries before? Is there anything about Christian belief that is original, that hadn't already been written in some other religion prior to that? You would think. I was hanging out with a high priest of Forged Covenant in San Antonio, who's the Wiccan group, and he says his patron deity is Dionysus, and he tells me all this story, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't think that God would make Jesus as a sequel to an already popular human idea. It seems to me that either Dionysus could make wine just like Jesus did, or more reasonably, Jesus couldn't do it either.
That's a good point. Makes sense to me. So, getting back to the original subject, I mean, some of these examples are just so minute that it's even if they're coincidences, why does it matter?
Yeah, that's another thing about Scripture. Why the fuck does it matter? Do you realize that most of the Bible has stories in it that don't pertain to anything? Fuck all. I mean, they don't give. Not only do they not give us any practical knowledge, what reason why you wash your hands. Wouldn't it be nice to know about viruses or bacteria or and contaminants or any of the other reasons why we wash our hands, why the purification of water, purification of food, any of that. Wouldn't it be nice to have some practical value information? But we don't get that in the Bible.
Yeah. Where's the germ theory gospel?
We get ritual traditions that make no fucking sense. And then we get the Ten Commandments erased and then replaced by a completely different Ten Commandments where everything is keeping the feast of the leavened bread and keeping the feast of weeks and all that, and don't boil a baby goat in its own mother's milk and all that shit. None of this has any practical value or use. It's all just ceremonial traditions. And why is God so terribly afraid that we will believe in other gods? If you were God and there was one God and it's you, would it matter? Wouldn't you rather that people have some understanding of the real world? You wouldn't care about their religion, right? You certainly wouldn't damn people over what they believe. If they behave in a godly way, meaning that they smite their associated villages and they for worshiping other gods, and they kill every man and his brother, and they hamstring all the horses and kill all the old people, burn the village to the ground, take all their booty, and oh, by the way, take their children, murder all the little boys, but keep the preteen girls, and yes, it specifies preteen girls, and keep those for your sex slaves. If you behave in a godly way, wouldn't if you're a god, if you're going to judge anything at all, wouldn't it be that kind of behavior that would piss you off? I wouldn't give a shit what they believe. I would rather that they know things, and so my Bible would be completely different than the Bible that is written. It would actually have practical information that is of value and use. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I'm ranting again.
It's cool. It's like these people believe in Baal. Should I appear to them? Nah, I'll just smite them all.
I wouldn't even do it myself. I will have my zealots.
Minions, go smite them.
Because why is it that God needs other? Why does it God need people to do His work? So God gives very specific instructions on. Like a page or two earlier, and said, "Thou shalt not kill." And then Moses comes down the mountain with that commandment and sees that his brother has built a golden calf. Then the commandment becomes, "Kill every man and his brother." Well, whose brother built the golden calf? That was Moses' brother, Aron. But in the next page, did Aron get killed? Like I said, no. Suddenly Aron is a priest. And Aron also has these detailed descriptions in the Bible, as if we need them now, to describe how many jewels, and what kind of precious metals are to be, sewn into his raiment for his.
So help you if you have 6 jewels instead of 7 jewels.
So we need God to give specific instructions on how we are supposed to, bequeath the priestly with this finement, or this finery, and how we are supposed to build the tabernacle, because God can't build a fucking tabernacle, right? And God can't build a boat or a box or a building. Now, God can't do anything. God can make dinosaurs and planets and everything that humans can't make, but He can't make anything humans can make.
Or an ark.
Because those things can't, that's a box. So those things can't appear by themselves, so people have to make them, almost as if God didn't exist.
I, the priest, am telling you that the priest must have a jeweled robe.
Exactly.
And only green M&Ms in his dressing room.
Exactly. Yes, Reverend Copeland. Yes, you must have a $20 million mansion and a $20 million citation jet to go along with it. Yes. How fucking stupid are people? Why the hell do they still believe this? Why is it we have very, very arrogant scholars with high degree educations in this, and they believe in absolute bullshit, but they're very arrogant about it and so superior,
I'm very arrogant. You should believe me. I'm very arrogant.
Oh, fuck me. I mean, come on. Why can you not show there's any truth to it? Oh, I've shown all kinds of it. No, you've shown all kinds of fallacies. That's what it is. Right? Subjective impressions, logical fallacies, frauds, falsehoods, fantasies. That's it. That's all you got. You don't have anything that actually indicates that what you're saying is true. And we have a hell of a lot that proves that it isn't. Oh, but I have a degree in philosophy. Fuck you.
Example 3. Part of the problem, in addition to just being about literally nothing, is that to call some of these things undesigned coincidences, you have to take passages completely out of context and apply a whole new reading to them that is not at all necessary to these passages. So if you go to John 1, for example, that's the chapter that starts with in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's all starts
That's not John 1.
That's the one all about where Jesus is pre-existent. He was with God in the beginning, and so.
Wasn't that
so
John
forth.
3:16? No, I'm sorry. You're right.
A couple
sorry.
chapters later, but
Yeah.
there's a few in there like that. But this is specifically about John 1, because after all that stuff about Jesus being pre-existent, then it starts talking about John the Baptist and him paving the way for Jesus. And
Yeah, no,
John,
I think John the Baptist was real.
it's possible.
Yeah, I think John the Baptist was both real and one of a handful of inspirations for Jesus, and that the storytellers, because that's what all this is, the storytellers wanted to take over the popularity of John the Baptist, and so they have to write a story where John the Baptist then bequeaths all of his power over to Jesus. So now the readers have the authority of John the Baptist transferred into their new character, Jesus, which the Muslims did the same thing. I mean, there was a Persian story where there's a Persian Zoroastrian who converts to Islam, and he goes to meet Jesus, who still exists and was in their theology never crucified or killed. So Jesus still exists, and he comes out of his house every day and heals people because Jesus has this power because he's a prophet of God. And this Persian comes to Jesus because he wants to know the truth of God, and Jesus says, well, I am not the one to tell you. You need to go to Muhammad. So now they've appropriated Jesus to refer Christians to Muhammad. And that same tactic, that same strategy is being used where they write an additional story for John the Baptist so that he appropriates his power into this new character, Jesus. And that's where God appears and has to say, this is my son in whom I'm very proud.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like I say, that wouldn't be surprising at all. I mean, this is talking about John 1:30. John the Baptist says, this is he of whom I said, after me comes a man who ranks before me, because he was before me. Now, given the context of the chapter, and you think that would be talking about all that pre-existence, he was with God in the beginning, all that kind of stuff. And that would make sense, but what if there was more to it? What if it was about birth order? Because in Luke 1, it notes that John the Baptist was born about 6 months before Jesus was.
You don't have to be significantly older, though, really, in the story. So you have the more popular guy, and then you have the new usurper that the new cult wants to supplant
Old
their
and
guy.
busted, new hotness.
But it's sorry, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I mean, you can have people who are contemporary in age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one is the more popular, and then you just bequeath that popularity over, and okay, your story is done. Now we can go have you beheaded or whatever the fuck happened to him, and then all of that popularity goes to Jesus. And it reminds me of, like, okay, so what happened to John the Baptist? Okay, well, he gets killed, and so his followers want to pretend that their guy didn't really die. It's like the Elvis worshippers. They want to believe that Elvis is working in a 7-Eleven somewhere, you know, that he's still alive. Same thing happens with all these believers when they have their little cult leader, and the cult leader dies, and they don't want to accept that he's dead. Well, now you have the Jesus cult that follows the previous cult, the John the Baptist cult, and now they want to bequeath their power over in there. And then Jesus cult leader dies, and now they have to deify him, because that's what people do, right? We will start saying, oh, you know, that guy, the guy that was just killed in this car wreck, well, he was the greatest guy. Well, you might have hated him yesterday, before you knew he was in a car wreck, and now he's okay. You know, now you have respect for him for whatever fucking reason, just because he's dead. But if you've believed in him already, well, now you can't accept that he's dead. Especially not if the character that you're talking about was not initially even really a single real guy. Mm-hmm. But of course, if you hint at mythicism, then everybody scoffs. Well, you're not a scholar, because every historian that was raised Christian never questions the belief they were raised with. Of course, they didn't.
Yeah, and it's like even. Like I said, in order to make the case that John is singularly referring to birth order, you have to basically ignore the very next verse, where John says, "I myself did not know him, but for this purpose I came baptizing with water, that he might be revealed to Israel." So John the Baptist is specifically saying he's there to call the way for Jesus. He's not talking about birth order at all. But in order to make it some sort of magical divine fingerprints on the book. You have to try and weasel your way into reading between the lines and think it's talking about something completely different than what it's obviously talking about in context.
Atheist Edge. Walking the edge of what some consider offensive. But your feelings don't matter here. Only facts.
Chris, how many are there?
I think I have 4 or 5 on here.
Oh, good. Okay.
We could probably just edit out Aron Ra ranting and do
just
like 15 minutes.
edit me out.
Edgy commentary on the dangers of doctrine, the foibles of faith, the bullshit of belief, the stupidity of superstition, and the idiocy of indoctrination.
Do you have anything darker?
You want a porter?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're one of my porters.
Kick up the ABV, would you?
Oh, shit.
Okay, so
With razor-sharp wit, curiosity, and critical thought, we take an unblinking look at today's religions. We are Atheist Edge.